Friends, mark the words. Director for any fraudulent, unlawful, wrongful, omission, conduct, likely act, omission, conduct or thereof. Very wide. Auditors, including audit firm of the company for any improper or misleading statement of particulars made in his audit report or for any fraudulent, unlawful or wrongful act or conduct. Or any expert or advisor, consultant or any other person for any incorrect or misleading statement made to the company or for any fraudulent, unlawful or wrongful act or conduct or any likely act or conduct of this kind. So even advisor, consultant, outsiders are covered against whom then class action suit can be filed for obtaining to seek any other remedy which the tribunal may deem fit. Now who can file the class action suit? In case of a company having a share capital not less than 100 members of the company or not less than such percentage of number of members as it may be prescribed under the rules, whichever is less, or any member or members holding not less than such percentage of issued share capital of the company as may be prescribed, subject to the condition that the applicant or applicants has or have paid all calls and other sums due on his or their shares. In case of company not having a share capital, not less than 1/5 of the total number of its members, required number of depositors shall not be less than 100 depositors or not less than such percentage of total number of depositors as may be prescribed. So these are the categories which can, this is the qualifying criteria for filing a class action suit, which is, I think, a distant reality in India. It will not catch up so soon. But coming years, of course, when the investor protection forums come together, and which is what as advisors we feel is likely to happen, that many investor protection advisory companies are going to mushroom left, right and center, advising the investors bodies to take action against the directors, not to vote against particular resolution. In any case, we already have those companies like InGovern and others who have advisory voting, proxy voting advisory services, who are advising. If you go to their website and if you see, just before certain AGMs, they would put up their recommendation whether to vote for a particular director, whether to vote for a particular transaction or not in case of listed companies, and their views as to why a particular resolution should not be passed. So going forward with these provisions, which once they come into full-fledged enforcement and implementation, will take time. But we see a situation where advisory companies, minority shareholders will mushroom and advise them how to recover their views from the companies by obtaining these kind of reliefs against companies and its officers. What are the matters which are required to be considered by tribunal while granting this class action relief? The checks and balances now have been provided so that if a litigator does not fraudulently file a class action suit just to harass the company and its officials. So tribunal has to ensure that whether the member or depositor is acting in good faith, making the application and seeking the order. Any evidence before it as to the involvement of any person other than directors or officers of the company on any of the matters provided. Whether the cause of action is one which the member or depositor could pursue in his own right, rather than through an order under this act through the class action. If a member is entitled to or is capable or eligible to file his action and he doesn't want the support, or he doesn't require the support of the others, then tribunal has to ensure that if he is capable, that class action will not be allowed. Any evidence before the tribunal as to the views of the members or depositors of the company who have no personal interest, direct or indirect, in the matter being proceeded under this section. Where the cause of action is an act or omission that is yet to occur, whether the act or omission could be, and in the circumstances would be, likely to be authorized by the company before it occurs or ratified by the company after it occurs. So practical thing is that suppose a certain resolution needs to be passed at the AGM or the extraordinary general meeting, and that resolution is likely to be passed or is passed and is capable of being ratified by the company under articles or under company law. So that is the some kind of a relief given, that actions which are ratifiable by the shareholders' special resolution passed at the meeting by the board of directors or any other members, then class action suit will not lie. that action should be at least in the four corners of the law. It should not be in violation of either your articles of association or the Companies Act and the rules. If that action can be ratified by the shareholders authority, where there is a special resolution required, or where there is an ordinary resolution required, or where there is a postal ballot required, that action is capable of being ratified. In such an event, class action will not be allowed by the tribunal. Next topic, friends, is Serious Fraud Investigation Office, which is in relation to the definition of fraud and who is the enforcing agency who can initiate actions under investigation. So now they have a body which earlier was there under 1956 Act but had no force of law. It was through the notification and there were no powers which were codified or legislated in the form of the Act. Now they have powers given in the Act itself, so it has a force of law. It is a body within the provisions of the Act, so no actions of this body can be challenged by anybody if they are acting within their powers as are prescribed in the Act and the rules. So it is a body with wide powers. Stringent penalty provided for fraud related as we observed in the past slides. CFO's report to be treated as report filed by police officer. So they are granting them as a the position of a police officer. So you don't require an FIR to be filed with the police officer. The CFO only can take that matter forward with the government and NCA prescribed penalties. Power to arrest in certain cases which attract punishment for fraud, and any person accused of such offence shall be released on bail subject to conditions as mentioned in the relevant provisions of this Act. Protection of employees during investigation by the authorities provided. During inquiry and investigation or on request of creditor having due or more than 1 lakh rupees, dues of 1 lakh rupees, the central government may by order direct that transfer, removal, disposal of funds, assets, property of the company shall not take place during such period not exceeding 3 years, or may put restrictions and conditions as they fit. Foreign companies are also covered under this chapter. So this is an interesting topic because before this, hitherto we were all covered under the SEBI Insider Trading Regulation Act in respect of listed companies. Now they have provided for private companies, associate companies, and even public companies where public is not involved in the gamut of insider trading. And they have now, besides SEBI, now public companies and private companies are also covered. So what is insider trading is the same definition, but if you see carefully, an act of subscribing, buying, selling, dealing or agreeing to subscribe, buy, sell or deal in any securities by any director or key managerial personnel or any other officer of a company, either as a principal or agent, if such director or key managerial personnel or any other officer of the company is reasonably expected to have access to any non-public price-sensitive information in respect of securities of the company, or an act of counseling about procuring or communicating directly or indirectly any non-public price-sensitive information to any person. Price-sensitive information means any information which relates directly or indirectly to a company and which if published is likely to materially affect the price of securities of the company. Now if securities are not marketable on the floor of stock exchange, how will you determine the price of the securities of the public company which is not quoted or listed on stock exchange? But nevertheless they have in their wisdom provided that in such a situation insider trading can happen. More so, this provision is made out because we have lot of these days we have lot of private equity investors in the form of joint ventures, venture capitals in the companies. So private equity investor, be it foreign private equity investor or an Indian private equity investor who invests in a joint venture or a venture capital company and who is governed by the shareholders agreement, even if it is not listed. And at times the clamor was and the complaint was by these investors that promoters take undue advantage of the situation. Certain decisions are not known to us, and they kind of either hedge on the price or they take benefit or an undue advantage or gain out of the securities and the price, either by pledging the shares with the lenders or doing an interstate transaction between family members, etc. So In case where private equity investors are involved, they would like to enforce this rigorously if they found that promoters are indulged, not necessarily in the listed company. Promoters are indulged or officers of the company are indulged in this kind of information, which can be disadvantageous to the private equity investor who has all the exit rights under the shareholders agreement, be it the first right of refusal or be it drag along, tag along, or any other right where he secures his exit after ensuring that he has a minimum IRR to be recovered at the end of the funds period or the shareholders agreement after bringing the company at a level of certain valuation. So obviously in those circumstances this provision will be invoked by private equity investors, even in case of private joint ventures. What is the imprisonment penalty? 5 years, or with fine which shall not be less than 5 lakh rupees, but which may extend to 25 crore rupees, or 3 times the amount of profits made out of insider trading, whichever is higher. So you can imagine the gravity. 525 crore rupees, or 3 times the amount of profit one makes. I don't know which company will have, a private company or a public company, who make this kind of obscene profits due to insider trading. Only valuation can tell us as to certain companies which have very high valuation, even they are public but not listed, to get this kind of turnovers and profitability, which can then lead to 3 times of the profits as a penalty, which is somewhat in line with SEBI regulations on insider trading. There also under SEBI Act, maximum penalty is 10 years and 25 crores. Similarly, in the Foreign Exchange Management Act also, this provision exists: 3 times the profits if you violate Foreign Exchange Management Act. Similarly, in Competition Act also, 3 times the profits of turnover, etc. they have provided as a penalty quantum. The same thing they have brought in here. Now, this is good to have it. Now, time will only tell us how this is enforced by the powers are there, how this is enforced in letter and spirit going forward. So, we will have to wait and see for a couple of years or more when I think MCA will be fully active and tribunal in place, and instances of fraud are detected during that period of time, because cooling off period is given for next year, early next year, 31st March 2015 and thereafter. I think MCA will also go slow initially to just judge the behavior of the company, conduct of the company and the management, and they may take a harsh action only after a lapse of a certain period of time. But that goes, I mean, neither here nor there. Provision is there, power is there, so we have to be circumspect and mindful of these penalties. In case of deposits, penalty for failure to repay deposit has been made extremely stringent. Depositor may apply to tribunal for an order directing the company to pay the sum due or loss or damage incurred by him as a result of non-payment. Besides the remedy to file a class action, this is a separate penalty which is provided in Chapter 5. Where a company fails to repay the deposit, and if it is proved that the deposit has been accepted with intent to defraud the depositor or any fraudulent purpose, every officer of the company who was responsible for the acceptance of the deposit shall be personally responsible without any limitation of liability for all or any of the losses or damages that may have been incurred. Personal liability has been imposed in this section under deposits. So we dealt with penalties provided in Chapter 29. Then there is a fast track court proposal which is now provided in the Act, so that all these matters which are in the commercial nature, and considering that we have tremendous judicial backlog with the district courts and the high courts, and CLB not functioning properly, so they have tribunalized the CLB and the regional director's office, and they have provided a window of special court which have been vested with the powers of civil court to try, entertain and dispose all company matters which are required to be mentioned in terms of the provisions of the Act. So all the powers, single judge will sit in the special court bench, and every jurisdiction would have a separate special court, especially where there are a large number of companies located, and wherever the registered office of the company is located, the special court will have exercise jurisdiction beside the tribunal, zone-wise tribunal which they are contemplating. Department realized that the litigators on company matters have all the resources and wherewithal to engage best of the counsels and lawyers by paying them very high fees and defending their actions before the courts of law. First time they have now provided that, notwithstanding under Code of Criminal Procedure Code, special prosecutors will be engaged by the department for prosecuting and defending the proceedings under company law. Either to what used to happen and what is happening currently, the department is only having lawyers or the advisors who are paid a paltry sum of 1500 rupees and 1000 rupees, and they expect them to defend or prosecute cases of magnitude of 2G and others. Public prosecutors have no no fee or no advantage of appearing for the government. Now they have provided that they will engage special prosecutors and they will be highly paid. Obviously, this money will be recovered from investor education fund and all other resources which they are like, all the penalties which they are going to get out of violations of the act. So you will see going forward the quality of arguments, quality of prosecutions and quality of cases on merits will improve or is likely to improve if they hire the services of best of the professionals who are available to represent the MCA in the matters. 439 says that offences as a whole are non-cognizable offences. Now, non-cognizable and cognizable, I am sure you must be aware, but I should highlight this fact that no other court can take cognizance of the offence which are provided under this Act, and special court and tribunal can only take cognizance of those offences. Plus, there is one other element, like it says, notwithstanding anything contained in CRPC, every offence under this Act except the offences referred in 2126 of the Companies Act shall be deemed to be non-cognizable within the meaning of the said code. Now, if you see 212, Section 212 is part of the investigation section, investigation of by the department to the inspectors. It has a list of sections which are made cognizable and the other sections they are saying those all will be non-cognizable and these sections will be cognizable. Now, how it reads, notwithstanding anything under CRPC, Section 7 subsection 5 and 6 that relates to incorporation and any statement made in the process of incorporating a company. If a statement is to be found to be false or fraudulent, then that section becomes cognizable, section under 212. Cognizable means no bail can be granted by the court, by the special court, on the application made by the accused. Now, if accused think that I have a right to get a bail of that offence, and if he is eligible to make an application to the special court bench that I have not committed this offence or this matter needs to be tried and I am not going to tamper with the evidence, so as a matter of right, he seeks a bail from the bench. But in this case, that is 2126, no right of bail is granted. What it says, Section 7, subsection 5 and 6, incorporation. Section 34, misstatement in prospectus. Section 36(1), fraudulent inducement to invest money in a company. Section 38, personation for acquisition of securities. Section 46(5), certificate of shares. Section 56, transfer and transmission of shares. Section 66, reduction of share capital of the company. Section 140, subsection 5, removal of the auditor. Section 2064, power to call for inspection of books and records of the company, refusal by the company to provide. Section 229, penalty for furnishing false statement, destruction of company's records. Section 448, as we saw, false statement to be made knowingly by the person that it is not true. And 447 is a fraud. So in these cases, what they are saying is that this is a cognizable offence which attract the punishment for fraud shall be cognizable, and no person accused of any offence under these sections which I read out to you shall be released on bail or on his own bond unless the public prosecutor has been given an opportunity to oppose such bail application for such release. And where the public prosecutor opposes the application, the special court is satisfied that there are reasonable grounds for believing that he is not guilty of such offence and there is not likely to commit any offence while on bail. Provided where a person who is under the age of 16 years or is a woman or is sick or infirm may be released on bail by special court under these sections. But otherwise, bail as a matter of right will be rejected because public prosecutor is going to oppose every application made by an accused of bail, and he can be then retained in judicial custody or remand for longer period by the special court under this provision. So, coming back to the cognizable, non-cognizable offence, 439 says all other offences other than 2126 which I read out are non-cognizable. So, in these cases, they have a right to seek bail and compound the penalties under the compounding provisions or try to get other relief. So these other sections are not very harsh, but fraud related section, as I read out in the earlier part of my talk, and misstatement, concealment of fact, this, that, all that is covered under cognizable offences. Compounding is also provided under 441. So what are the offences which are compoundable and what are the offences which are not compoundable are highlighted in this slide. One new provision has been brought in under 442 where they have said that central government is authorized to maintain a panel of experts to be called as mediation and conciliation panel between the parties during the pendency of any proceedings before the central government tribunal or appellate tribunal. So you will have conciliators, mediators who are knowledgeable of matters which are of commercial importance under Companies Act to act as arbitrators to reconcile the dispute between either the department or the companies and the parties or other parties. Any parties to the proceedings may apply to the central government or the tribunal or the appellate tribunal for referring the matter pertaining to the proceedings to mediation and conciliation panel. Central government or the tribunal or the appellate tribunal may suo motu refer any matter to such number of experts from the mediation and conciliation panel as it deems fit. Any party aggrieved by the recommendation of mediation and conciliation panel may file objections to central government tribunal or appellate tribunal as the case may be. So this is a welcome move because commercial disputes cannot go long for a longer time to be fought because it is a drain on your money, efforts, time, and opportunities which are lost by doing the business. So, for speedier resolutions and not to get entangled in the court and tribunals and other forums, this should be a welcome form provided it works and functions very well, where minor trivial disputes can always be referred to the tribunal and faster resolution can be achieved through this mechanism. So I think I have covered all the slides which were there in my presentation. I hope you have liked the presentation and understood the overall scheme of the Act. The way I have presented and the way I look at it is going to be self-disclosure based, transparent disclosures, no concealment of facts, and self-regulatory with the approval of or blessings of the shareholders by way of a special resolution, because most of the items in the Companies Act have now been provided to be passed by the shareholders with disclosures on related party, disclosure of interest of directors by way of a special resolution, explanatory statement and all. Couple of points before I wind up the presentation. Again on this, since this topic I find always very interesting, I will draw your attention to section 102 again in this context. Section 102 is equivalent section to section 173 of the Companies Act. Deals with the explanatory statement annexed to the notice of the AGM or EGM, which is more or less same as what was provided under 173. Additional items have been provided, but what is again in the context of my presentation I would like to highlight not scaring you but highlight the same context. Subsection 4, which says, where in the explanatory statement, where as a result of the non-disclosure or insufficient disclosure in any statement under this section being made by promoter, director, manager if any, or other key managerial personnel, any benefit which accrues to such promoter, director, manager, or other key managerial personnel or their relatives, either directly or indirectly, promoter, director, manager, or other key managerial person, as the case may be, shall hold such benefit in trust for the company and shall, without prejudice to any other action which may be taken against him under any other act or law or under this act, be liable to compensate the company and the shareholders to the extent of benefit received by him. So you can imagine even non-disclosure and insufficient disclosure is also covered in the explanatory statement which you give while seeking shareholders approval through special resolutions. So we will have to be extremely cautious in advising clients or the companies with whom we are working that statements which are not true should not be made. One classic example I give. A week back, a request came from one of the stalwarts in the industry who's heading independent directorships in many listed companies. Now, if you see section 149(6), which defines the criteria as to how a person can become an independent director and what all conditions needs to be satisfied by a person demonstrating that he is an independent person having no conflict of interest or no personal interest in the company or with his promoters. One of the criteria is that the person is or was not a promoter of the company at any point. There is no timeline given there. He says the person who is seeking independent directorship in the company is or was not a promoter at any company. Section 149(7) seeks to or mandates that person who is seeking appointment as an independent director should file a declaration with the company. And it reads as follows. Again, in the context of my presentation, I am trying to highlight this. One more example as to how they are seeking transparent disclosures and voluntary disclosures. 149(6) defines the term who is an independent director, and 149(7) says every independent director shall at the first meeting of the board in which he participates as a director and thereafter at the first meeting of the board in every financial year or wherever there is any change in the circumstances which may affect his status as an independent director, give a declaration and he meets the criteria of independence as provided in subsection 6. He has to self-disclose that I meet the criteria of independence and therefore I am eligible to be appointed. So there is a form which is given consent and all that. In this particular case, the gentleman which I am talking about, I am without naming, he was a promoter 10 years back of that company. Now request comes from company secretary that he is chairman of the company, he has been independent director for last 5 years, 10 years, whatever God knows. Originally he had investment. In good old days, 20 years, 30, 40 years back, he had the investment which he exited. He sold out the investment, but he continued in the company as a chairman of the company. Now that declaration says that he has to declare. Company secretary says, can he make a declaration that I was not a promoter at any point in time? Though you may be not a promoter under SEBI, you may have filed disclosures in the takeover code and said that I have disassociated myself, I have exited from the company, I don't hold a single share in the company, therefore I am not a promoter. But with this definition of promoter under Companies Act, if he happens to if he give an advice to company secretary that nothing will happen, you file a declaration, ask him to file a declaration that he meets the criteria, because obviously they don't want him to be removed of the company. He's been in the company for quite some time as a chairman, as an independent director. So he was adamant that I want to get him as an independent director, can I make this statement? Immediately what came to my mind was 447, concealment of material fact. 448, false statement, knowingly that you are false statement.